So we all know how important JavaScript form validation is. If you do not have it in place, you will have to pay a huge price. Firstly, the data quality will not be reliable. You will be getting all sorts of junk data from the user. Secondly, the most important thing is security. Any malicious actor or a hacker can inject code which can compromise your application, the data and the infrastructure. It can all go down. So that's a huge risk. But worry not, I have got 3 different ways in which you can validate forms with JavaScript. So make sure to watch this video completely. Alright, let's begin. First and foremost is the HTML5 validation. HTML5 validation comes out of the box from the browser, from the HTML5 itself. We get certain keywords, certain tags which can be used to validate. For example, we have got this required keyword which says that this particular field in the form is required. Likewise, we have got many other keywords which can help in the validation. Let us quickly jump into this example. Alright, so here I've got a basic form. You can see registration form with name, age, email, and some basic styling done just to center the box so everything looks clean and crisp. This is the form. I've given an ID to it, although I do not need it. Now here, the most important thing is this tag which I've used here, required. Alright, this shows that this field is required. Secondly, you see the age is of type number, which means it will not accept any alphabets. Also, there is a minimum value to it. Email is of type email. It validates if it's a proper email format or not, and then there is a submit button. Now if I submit this form, you see there is an error message, please fill in this field, because I have used required keyword. Now let's say if I enter a name here and give an age of 17, because my minimum value is 18, right? I want to see if it throws an error or not. Junk email address. Now you see that this says your value must be greater than or equal to 18, but it does not show any error message for this field. So there's one problem with this HTML5 validation. The thing is that it validates everything in sequence, and hence HTML5 is not suited for your complex forms. If you've got like basic, just the username and password kind of thing, that should be good, but not beyond that. Now if all this looks too simple to be real, it does not meet your expectation, it's kind of boring, I have got another one. The second way to validate form is through custom JavaScript. As the name suggests, you have to write your own custom JavaScript, and that can get complex. So you need to have some skills with JavaScript, but then you do not have to depend on any other library or a browser whatsoever. So you maintain your own code, make sure that it's maintained over the time, but it's highly customizable. Let's quickly jump into this example. Alright, let's look into what I've got here. The same form, name, this time address and email. Nothing's changed here from the previous case. So we've got name, just the address change, and then email. Now, here is the interesting part. I'm going to add a script at the bottom because I want my script to load after the form has loaded. That's the efficient way of loading the JavaScript. That should be done. Now here I've got a class form validator. You can use class keyword in JavaScript. I hope you know that. So in form validator class, I've got a constructor. In the constructor, I'm accepting form ID. So I've got all my form elements into this object, and then there is this input which I extract. Basically, it gets all the input type from the form and puts into this variable, and then it calls an add event listener. Now add event listener is the most important thing here because you have to handle the submit event. So you need to have a listener because you're not dependent on the default behavior, right? You have to manage it yourself. So that's why we have got add event listener, which is fired on submit event. And what happens after the submit event is fired? This callback is being invoked. Now this is where the validation is being done here. Now let's go to the validate function. In the validate function, I've got firstly, I am preventing the default behavior of the submit. So the form does not get submitted. There's a variable to handle validation is valid, false, true, and then I loop through all the input elements, name, address, email, with this for each loop. And in this for each loop, firstly I clear the error, because if I don't clear the errors will get added and it will get appended as many times as I click the submit button. So here I firstly check for the text field and see if it's empty. If it's empty and the field is required, then I can have this marked as field is required. The error message is set here in this set error function. Set error function does nothing but basically adding your error div, error style or class to your input. So The thing is, you see your error message just beneath the field. Now, second condition is if the input type is email, I can check for email validity. This is done through regex. I can use regular expression like this, and I can validate if my email address has got @ or not, in that particular format. Lastly, I just invoke or instantiate my form, and that's it. Now if I run this, if I click on submit button, let's see what happens. So here you can see that name field is required with this particular condition here. The field is required, and secondly, the address is required because I want all my text field to be required. I mean, you can customize it your own way, but this is how it is here in my example. And then the email is invalid. Now let's enter some values XYZ, and let's enter some junk value in the email. Now there is one interesting thing happening here. The message which you're seeing here is not coming from my custom JavaScript. In fact, it is coming from the HTML5. And why? Because I have got the type as email, but you can customize it. There's an option for that. Tell me in the comments if you want to know how to customize HTML5 error messages, and I'll be happy to create a video on that. If custom JavaScript is still too complex for you, you do not want to spend so much time coding yourself, or you do not have that much skill, the last option is for you. Here we are going to use the open source libraries. There are various open source libraries which are available you can use, and it's maintained by different entities, but you have to ensure that you are getting the code from a reliable source. That reliability is upon you. The onus is on you. So make sure you use a well-rated, time-tested library. So here the problem is that you would have to depend on obviously the third party. Secondly, if anything goes wrong, then you have to probably look up on the internet, find out a solution for that. Maybe the patch would not be available at that time. So all those problems which can come up with open source are still there. But it saves you time. You don't have to write that much of JavaScript. You just write the integration of the code, making the function calls, and that's it. So there's Parsley.js, Validator.js, and many others. I mean, you can search on the internet for yourself. I'm not going to go into deep on that. I have given you 3 options. It's upon you to choose. If you know of any other way, do mention in the comments. If you are new to my channel, make sure to subscribe. I've got a JavaScript playlist which you can look around. If you find them interesting, do share it. Thanks for watching.